Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I truly appreciate you being here. In the previous videos we talked about our bug out bag, what we had in it, and as I said, I want to show you how to start using some of the stuff that's in your bag. Today we're going to talk about cover elements and shelter construction. And we're also going to talk about site selection. Before we get started, I want to thank each and every one of my subscribers and everybody that's been watching my videos, whether you're subscribed or not. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would ask that you please consider doing so. I also want to thank our sponsor for today's video, Genesis Gold Group. Check them out at the link below, and we'll talk about it some more at the end of this video. Let Jonathan and his team at Genesis Gold Group guide you through how to convert part of your 401k or IRA into a gold-backed IRA to help defend and protect your wealth against rising inflation. So stick around, stay tuned, and let's get started. I apologize for the wind today, guys. Ain't nothing I can do about that. It's really windy out here. Hopefully the sound will be all right. I did put the windscreen on the microphone. But when we're talking about spending the night, whether it be for regular camping, a survival situation, or bugging out, there's 5 things that we need to consider, what they call the 5 W's. Of course, we got to have wood if we're going to be building a fire. We're going to have water to replenish our water sources. We want to be out of the prevailing winds, so we need to consider our wind directions. The prevailing winds, you want that to your back if at all possible. That way the wind's not blowing into your shelter, and it's also not blowing smoke from your fire into your shelter. We want to look around us if we're in the woods, look up above our head and everything, and look for what they call widow makers. We don't want to make sure there's no hanging dead treetops or tree limbs or anything above us that could fall and kill us. And the last thing we want to consider is wigglers and wildlife. We want to look our area over real good, make sure there's no ant nests, no kind of bug nests, no snakes. And if you're in an area where there's bears and other large predators present, you want to look for any signs of them and not be camping in their home. If we're doing this as part of a bug out situation, another thing that we want to consider is being off the beaten path. We don't want to set up our camp for the night in the roadway on a known trail where lots of people are moving. We want to move off the trail and away from there so that we can stay out of sight and out of mind. Now let's briefly go back over cover elements again. Cover elements is our clothing that we wear, and it's in the upper 70s, almost 80 degrees here today with bright sunshine. So yeah, I've got a short sleeve t-shirt on, a pair of pants. I have a pair of good quality boots on that provide stability and ankle support to help prevent injuries from sprained ankles and twisting ankles. For pants, I've got the True Spec 24/7 Expedition Series. I really like these pants. They have a lot of stretch in the areas where you need them to stretch. They have the knee pad pockets, which I have a set of knee pads inserted. They have various zippers and ways to add ventilation in if it's starting to get too hot on you. They're very similar to the Fall Raven pants, but for about half the price. Now let's start talking about shelter and shelter construction. One of the easiest things to use to construct a shelter, of course, is a poncho. I really like these One Wind ultralight ponchos. They weigh 1.1 ounces, and they're a little bit larger than the military style ponchos. I'll leave a link in the description box below to my Amazon affiliate. And yes, I may earn a commission if you decide to make a purchase, but it doesn't affect the price that you pay. And I will also leave the link to One Wind directly, because sometimes when you check on Amazon, this large size is sold out. In addition to the poncho, you're going to need a ridge line. I like to use the rapid deploy ridge lines that I make up ahead of time. It just saves so much time. They're so much easier to do. You don't have to tie any knots, and it just makes things so much easier. This is a new design that I learned about after talking with Blackie Thomas at the Kentucky Bushcraft Homestead and Preparedness Expo, and he showed me some slight changes that he had made, and they definitely make things a whole lot easier. And that is by adding the little coat buttons onto your prusik loops. It just makes it so much quicker and easier to just thread that through and button it, and I'll show you as I build this structure. The other thing you're going to need to build this shelter here, which I'm going to build a lean-to shelter, is 2 tent stakes. And I've also modified my tent stakes by adding the little wood coat buttons on the loops on the end of them so I can do the same thing. And I'll show you that as we build this shelter. Okay, everybody, we want to select us 2 trees that are probably 15 feet apart. And then we're going to take our rapid ridge line And we're going to pull this out of length. We're going to slide our prusik loops down, slide our wood toggle down, and we want to go around the tree about waist high. We're going to take the button, go through the loop, pull it tight. We're going to leave one prusik loop there. We'll start stretching our ridge line out. We're going to leave one in the middle, and we're going to take the remaining two with us. We're then going to go around the tree, stretch our line tight. We're going to hook our line into our prusik loop with a little figure 9 on it. Pull it tight, go around, lock it in place. We're done. We're then going to open up our poncho, pull it out of the stuff sack. We're going to take our hood, twist it up, fold it over, and we're going to take our pull cord for our hood and just wrap that up nice and tight. Now that we have our hood tied off, we're going to attach our poncho to our ridge line. Slide our prusik loop through, button it on the toggle, anchor it off. Then we'll go to the other opposite end. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to pass our prusik loop through our tie-out point on our poncho, over the button, and then stretch it tight. And this poncho actually has a tie-out loop in the center. So we're going to do the same thing with the center one. And I'll try to give you some close-up shots of all this once we get it constructed. We're then going to pull our poncho out. We're going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to use a tent stake. Go through the loop, button it, pull it out tight. Do the same thing on the other corner. All right, guys, now that we got this built, I'll do you some close-ups here. You can see how the loop goes through the toggle to attach your ridge line to the tree. Right here we have a prusik loop with a wooden coat button that's threaded through the tie-out loop on the end of the poncho. Same thing here in the center. Same thing on this end. Prusik loop. Ridge line goes around the tree. Goes into this night eyes carabiner. And it's locked off. Tent stake in the corner. Tent stake in the corner, and again, the little button loop. Secure the loop on the poncho. And if you've got extra stakes, you can pull it out here in the middle and stake it down here again as well. And as you can see, that gives you a pretty good sized shelter. Quick, easy, and give you some protection from the elements. You can put your back to your shelter if you're going to have a fire. Step off one full step and build your fire right there. Okay, everybody, there it is. A lean-to travel shelter. Works great in a bug out situation as well. One thing I don't never see mentioned, but if you're traveling in a group, which hopefully you would be in a bug out situation, everybody doesn't have to build a shelter. You can do hot seating. So while one person's pulling security, the other person can be in the shelter sleeping, and then they could just swap out, and the person that was sleeping for some time can go pull security, and the person that was on security can get some rest and sleep there. Good advantage of that is if everybody's got the same gear, and hopefully they would be. If you did have to suddenly leave this location, leave this stuff behind, the other person in the group would have the same gear in their pack. They would be taking their pack with them, and you could have that for later. These are quick and easy to take down. Don't take very much time at all to take one of these down and stow it away. Now the next shelter I want to discuss is the A-frame. And to build that, I'm going to change the position of our ridge line. We're going to drop it down to where it's just about knee high. We're then going to take our poncho and put the center of the poncho across the top of the ridge line. Take our tie out loop, go through our prusik, putting it in place and secure it. Go to the opposite end. And do the same thing. And for this one, you will need 4 tent stakes, one for each corner. And we're going to do the same thing on all 4 corners. Okay. As you can see, same setup as before with the ridge line, just lower to the ground. Tied it off here in the center. Tied it off here in the center. Staked it down on all 4 corners. As you can see there, that's why they call it an A-frame. Much lower profile, so it's going to be easier to hide. Will give you a lot better protection in heavy rain than the lean-to will. But as you can see, you're going to have to get down and crawl back in this thing. You ain't going to have any headroom or anything. So it just depends on the situation. And you can take additional stakes and tie this out on the sides here to give you a little more room. But there it is, the A-frame shelter. Okay, everybody, there it is. The 2 shelters that I would recommend everybody know how to do to use for a bug out situation. Again, a poncho doesn't weigh much. It's easy to do, easy to construct, especially with a rapid ridge line. If that ridge line is something you'd like to see a video on, and those modifications I did to those tent stakes, just let me know in the comments below, and that's something we can certainly do. There's definitely other types of shelters that can be done using a poncho or an emergency blanket, such as a plow point. And the other one you really want to know when it's cold weather is a super shelter. Okay, a very useful modification to these lean-to type shelters, especially in the winter time, is to construct what is called a super shelter. And all you need is some clear plastic. This here is just a roll of the cheap clear painter's plastic you can get at any big box store. Okay, and once we get our plastic unfolded, we're going to simply drape that over top of our shelter. You do carry Gorilla Tape, right? Just going to go over on the back side, take a couple of pieces of our Gorilla Tape, and just tape our plastic to our emergency blanket. And you want to make sure you tape it at least enough times to make sure it's secured. Then we're going to come around to the front. We're going to take all that excess plastic to where we've got a 90-degree angle. And we're going to come on one end, and again taking our Gorilla Tape, and we're going to roll this up and leaving a small vent hole at the top. We're going to tape them together, and we'll weight that down with a piece of wood. And then our opposite end will be our doorway to get in and out of our shelter. And then what you end up with is a clear plastic front on the front of your shelter. With your doorway to go in, and you can pull that down and weight it down and close that off. And then you're going to go 3 feet away, one good full step shelter. Then you're going to build what we call a long fire lay right here. Now the heat from that fire is going to radiate through that plastic and heat the inside of that shelter up, much like our greenhouse. And I know we constructed some of these at that survival course. It was 75 degrees inside these easy, and probably about 35 outside. So they definitely work. The plastic's cheap, doesn't take up a lot of space in your pack. Definitely a good consideration to do in the winter months when it's really cold out. Don't forget to check out the link below for One Wind. If you're interested in this poncho, 1.1 ounces, it's hard to beat. Don't forget about Genesis Gold Group. Check them out at the link that's down below as well. I truly appreciate you watching. If you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, I would encourage you to make that your #1 priority and your #1 prep. Remember, prepare today for what may happen tomorrow. I will see you on the next video.